Hello there. My name is Rudy Camarillo. I am trying to reach out to a investigative journalist, reporter, anything like that. I've reached out to many, if not all, entities through the chain of command within our government regarding a conspiring and corruption case that consists of the state of Iowa, partially the state of Nebraska, and several police departments, the Glenwood Police Department, the Omaha Police Department, and they've reached outside the jurisdiction, but those are the two police departments that have been taking a strong part in this for many years now, 5. It initiated with me being unlawfully terminated by the state of Iowa. I worked with the disabled. I was a strong human rights advocate. You can see on YouTube's Truth Justice, where I'll be putting this, another testimony of me reading it that has been submitted to the Omaha FBI. Kelly Garcia, Director of Human Services for the state of Iowa, and Governor Kim Reynolds of the state of Iowa, and many other resources, even the local Department of Justice. Now, this is on a Glenwood Resource Center of Glenwood, Iowa. It's a facility for the disabled, right? Well, it started with an unlawful termination, some small town conspiring. If you look into my story, and there's an investigative journalist or reporter that truly feels like fulfilling their oath, accompanying me as I exercise my First Amendment and work towards having my Sixth Amendment respected, you will find that there's much abuse and much supporting evidence of this. So with the Glenwood Resource Center just last year, New York Times did an article on it. The Department of Justice, FBI was in there. They're found guilty of human experimenting, right? Well, my case started with an unlawful termination in which it ruined my life. You know, my ex-wife was just, from what I hear, sleeping with a married officer, fraternizing with the wrong people in a small town. Real small town thing, but it got blown way out of proportion for self-preservation, defamation, slander, and political ploys and propaganda purposes, right? Because they found out there was a lot of damages done because it led to an unlawful termination by the state of Iowa, and it's not like it's in a small town, so they're a state facility operating on a small town mentality. Well, it caused my family a lot of damage. It cost me custody of my children. It was months after my mother took her own life, who was terminated 6 months before that by the same state of Iowa facility after she worked there for 13 years. But like me, she was referred to as what they call a soft touch, an individual who advocates for human rights and civil rights within the people that are disabled and have no voice or choice, correct? As fulfilling our mission statement. Well, it's a highly abusive facility. And if you watch my other video, they're trying to keep it under wraps, right? Because they get rid of people like me that stand up and will advocate for these people, submit writings, and be like, hey, we're violating their civil rights, constitutional rights, and human rights, most importantly, right? Through the abuse, restriction of meals, and stuff like that. Well, on the other one that under Truth and Justice on YouTube, you can also read Used, Abused, and Amused by Rudy Camarillo. It's on Amazon. I had to write a 240-page book after being systematically oppressed and slandered and defamed, and having no right to advocacy after contacting 250 of the local lawyers, but they were all in on it. Like, it's a very deep and dark situation. Like I said, my mother had taken her life. Working with these people meant the world to me, truly did, and it was my ability to take and maintain custody of my children. Well, through my wife having small, internal ties with the infrastructure of a small town, which I left in 2003, but came back temporarily for, was trying to get on the fire department. I mean, it jeopardized everything, right? And I was going for full custody of my kids with a wife that was injecting substances. We won't go down that road. But, so I turned in all this abuse, everything. I'm saying, hey, something needs to be done, just restore my family. And let me advocate for these people. Let me show you the loopholes, the red flags, stuff like that. If you read that other statement that I actually turned into DOJ, FBI, governor, I mean, they're all well aware of it. The state of Iowa, actually, I can tell you guys, many ways in which they systematically oppress and hide the abuse of these individuals. I mean, they have a structure put in place to cover up the abuse so they can retain employees that are highly abusive. without having to, they're worried about insurance packets and finances and stuff like that. That's where I say it's about fundings, not freedoms there, right? So they cover it up. And in that other testimony that I submitted to these people, I mean, I'm talking about how, they'll test you. State level employees will test you. I've witnessed, like in front of me, they've kicked guys in the groins with full boots on just to show me that he can take pain, and then made him drink a boiling hot pot of coffee straight out of the pot, straight off the burner, and then joke about how his esophagus is burnt, stuff like that. Well, I kept it a little mild mannered, talking about how you can control the nonverbal autistic individuals if you go out in public where you hold their hand and it's called small joint manipulation. I was a former correctional officer, so I know it is that. You bend their finger in your hand and you squeeze it, and they joke about how when they're in pain, it looks like they're smiling and they're nonverbal. So when you're in public, you're actually hurting them and you can guide them anywhere you want. And it looks like he's happy, but really he's in pain, and they joke about this. It goes on nonstop. Well, I was a little filtered about it because I didn't want it to come out, but through fighting the system and the suppression and stuff, like, I am just the man that knows too much. I mean, there's drugs tied in, abuse, stuff like that. It's the only state facility, state job where there's no drug testing. So they network and they get the people they know, family members and everybody in there, because you're not going to turn people in for abuse if you know 6 other people that work there, correct? And jeopardize them. You just hush up and go your own way. Well, if you look in the Omaha World Herald, even the New York Times, I mean, through the last 15, 20 years, it's relentlessly, just every 2 years, abuse, human rights, abuse. So, I mean, there's a lot of substance to back this up, and they're trying to silence me because of the damage is done to myself and my family, plus the knowledge that I consist of. So, I'm going to get a little more into it right now to let you guys know that this is real. There are people out there that need advocated for, and I was a strong human rights advocate. So, some of the tactics they will use. So I lost my job. It took 2 years. The people of small town were fighting me, right? But I knew it was unlawful. It was a bunch of bogus stuff. They were trying to take my job, get me out of small town, so I wouldn't find out about an affair. You got police working with police dating state supervisors. I mean, it's a real small town dirty ordeal, right? For years I let it go because I didn't want to hurt anybody. But those people that I was protecting are continuously being hurt, and my family's been hurt because of this. It's not malicious as they have been. It's truly factual, and I look forward to being a strong advocate for the rest of my life, regardless of what the repercussions are. So I lost my job, right? 2 years I battled to come back. Well, they put me back in place a week after. You can look in the Omaha World Herald 2017. And then look at the timeline. I went back. So I became targeted. There's a lot of animosity. People were trying to drive me out because I fought for my job back for a year and a half, 2 years, right? And they put me back in a week after 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people were fired for abusing the disabled people, right? So, and that takes a lot. And that's just a fraction of it, right? That's just 12 people that get caught red-handed, to show how widespread this is. It's in the Omaha World Herald. You can read on it. So a week later, they put me back in. Well, everybody knew I was a strong human rights advocate. I put abusive men and women in their spots and said, you're not doing anything to these individuals without a voice that you want to do to me while I'm here. They're protected. So they put me in a week later, and everybody thought the state of Iowa put me in there to clean house, shut the place down. So they started targeting me, and I'm just trying to, at this point, I've been through so much trauma. Like I said, I lost my mother, was going through divorce. I had 50-50 biweekly custody of my kids, so 1 week at a time, and I was going for full custody because their mom was injecting drugs. Well, that's where they started the conspiring plans, so I couldn't get full custody, right? Just small town friends things. Well, so I'm trying to recover after this last 2 years of hell. I go back, they start targeting me. They drove me back out, right? Fired me while I was on FMLA. Also, the state of Iowa fired me, a veteran, a Marine veteran, with no unemployment. So it was an unlawful termination, no unemployment, cut my pay that day, and cut my medical benefits. And I was a contract employee, so I was supposed to, just like a police officer, if someone makes a false statement, which they did, then you get an investigation. If it's bad enough, you get a couple weeks off paid while they're doing an investigation. They cut me cold turkey, not even unemployment. I mean, I was starving, like I was applying for food assistance, and they were just being malicious and cut me off, right? And I had a broken collarbone that I'd done at work and a broken foot at the time, couldn't get any other work. So I mean, and my mom just taking her life. I was laid up. It was the worst time of my life. Read Used, Abused, and Amused: Story of Warriors World on Amazon by Rudy J. Camarillo. So I'm trying to get my life back together, and they drive me out. Well, then the police departments and stuff start trying to silence me because they unlawfully, like they've just done a ton of unlawful stuff and were harassing me. They used counselors, they've used churches, they've used everybody to silence me, right? They didn't want it coming out. Well, it got so bad that it went on for years, and then the fictitious BS carried on. Like you can imagine what a small town's like I said, I moved out of this town in 2002, 2003. An investigative journalist or reporter could look into it and see my address has changed. So I left, changed, right? People in a small town don't change. I left 2002, 2003, left, joined the Marine Corps, was a correctional officer, was working for the state with the disabled when this happened, and passed all the tests, waiting on someone to retire as a firefighter so I can get on the fire department, right? Either that or stay at the state facility, which I was planning on doing, and retiring at 59. My retirement would pass over either way, right? And this started when I was 31. I'm going on 38 soon. Just to show how far it set me back in life and cost me everything. Well, I went back, and I'm just trying to get my life back together, and it's just horrible. All the conspiring got horrible. People were coming up to me, like trying to, I don't know if they're weighing me out. They're like, you need to go work in this house. You know, the abuse got really bad here. When I went back and I was in, just alone in the, you got to go through a 2-week orientation. I was in orientation one day and we're going over being physical with these people, right? And I'm telling the rest of the class, because they're looking at me for wisdom, and the instructor, I mean, I know more than them as far as policy procedure and just how it truly operates working with human beings. And I said, hey, escalation of force. I said, getting physical with these people is the last thing you need to do, right? They're here for a reason. You got good pay, good benefits, you know, and it's an abusive facility at this time. So then the next day, the instructor got one of the most abusive, the guy that I was talking about that had kicked the guy in the groin and had him chug coffee. And he came in and he said, hey, it's not done the way it was when Rudy was here before, because everybody had to walk on eggshells and not abuse disabled people. They had to walk on eggshells because I would not allow them to abuse disabled people. So the instructor, that's how deep the abuse is. The instructor told one of the more abusive individuals, and he came in the next day to show. So that way, when these people came out of orientation, they didn't go witness a bunch of abuse and go turn everybody in, right? They had to know that that's the lay of the land, right? We're going to abuse people, and you're not going to say anything. What you're learning over here is crap, treating people with dignity and stuff. So that was the beginning of it. Then I went back, and so I worked in one of the more aggressive homes, right? Well, they take meals away. I'm going to tell you guys how it works. They take meals away from these individuals, which is a human rights violation, right? But the employees won't dump it themselves, so they can't, if they're like intelligent or verbal enough to make a statement or say something, they can't say, oh, that worker dumped my meal, because it's a human rights violation. You'll be terminated like that. They'll serve it up, so they have to say they got served, and then they'll go over there and they'll physically make them dump it in, so they don't even get to eat. They get their tray, they go over, they dump it in the trash can, right? It's a form of discipline up there. Well, they also do it so the ones that are the individuals that are more aggressive, and they're only aggressive. I never had these guys get aggressive with me. They're only aggressive because abuse renders abuse, love renders love, right? People couldn't believe, like when I was there, we had people that they said never had a conscience, didn't know how to love, coming out to tell me they love me before they went to bed, right? Big old 6'4" guys, and I love them too. Well, I went up to this house, and they do it to so if they act up, they want to keep them skinny and weak and stuff, so they'll take away their meals. These guys had all lost 20. It looked like a little Holocaust like building, like the 12 people in there. Like, so if you went and checked the state records on their weight, I mean, in the 2 years I was gone, they all dropped 20, 30 pounds, and they'll cover it up systematically and say, oh, well, we put this diet plan in place. We put this diet plan. No, what they're doing is they discuss it. I've seen it and I've heard it all. I worked there for years, right? They take away their meals and they want them to get weak. They don't want them to be strong enough to fight back. And if these people are like, they're there for mental dispositions, if they're on the verge of like getting upset, or you can see it in their eyes, like you're just weary of them, right? So you cater to them. You take a psychology standpoint, you speak to them, what's your problem, counseling, empathy, right? Well, these workers will talk at shift exchange and be like, he's about to pop, should we get him to pop today? and then they'll do it when I'm not in the room and I can hear them, like, and they'll be like, we're going to make him pop. So what they'll do is they'll go and they'll hit him, or, you know, they think he's escalating. So they'll get physical with him. So he has to fight and just get it out of his system. Then they beat him up, choke him out, do whatever they do, right? And that's how they handle it. So they get him weak, and then it's an abusive situation, right? Or like I've been told, and I don't know if I have or haven't seen, um, one, so these guys have IQs of 70, so you got to have a couple people to be a witness, right? Because they're not credited, right? Or some of them aren't even nonverbal. Well, if they're acting up, which is why you're there, why you make good money and benefits and stuff, they'll have one employee get in front of the guy, and then another employee sneak around the corner, come up behind him. So while he's distracting the guy, he'll run up, the employee will, and choke the guy out, pass him out onto the floor, and then it's called resetting. And when he comes back to, his mood's change, like, because they just cut the oxygen off to his brain and they knocked him out, right? So he's going to come back in a different mood. But then he can't document and say, well, it's this person. So if he tries telling on him, they'll say, well, did this guy, where was he standing? Oh, he was over here. So he didn't choke you out? No. So who choked you out? Well, I don't know. I don't know. It was from behind. And they're like, are you sure this happened? And they'll be like, and then the two employees, because it's 2 versus 1, will be like, oh, he's just making that up. He says it all the time. Well, it really happens. It's called resetting, right? Or like there's certain people up there that are bigger guys and individuals. They will go, they're the coming to Jesus meeting guys. They will go in the rooms with the guys and straighten them out physically. I've been put on the spot where people shut the door and tell me to punch people, and I just look at them, start sweating. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm here to protect these people, not hurt these people. But it's ongoing. So, like, if you check into the facility, Glenwood Resource Center, the superintendents as well, like, so they come in higher educated, it's a high paying job, right? Well, they come in, they think they know everything. Then by the time, 6 months goes by, they catch on to the abuse, and they're all looking for another job because they want to keep their career going, right? Or every year to two, they get caught up in an abuse scandal and they lose their job. So then the state can say, oh, we did something about it. Well, that person's not the one abusing them, and it's not the one on the floor, but it's the fall guy over and over. So if you check it, so right before I was terminated, I was terminated because there was just circumstances. I had my ex-wife with law enforcement, and then law enforcement dating state supervisors. It was a dirty small town ordeal, right? Well, and there were supervisors up there. The one that unlawfully terminated me, she was known to rule with an iron fist. Like, so if you were a strong advocate or challenge anything, like challenging abuse, she'd get you out of there. Like when I was unlawfully terminated, there was 3 other people by her that were unlawfully terminated, and they all got their jobs back. But I had to fight for mine. And 2 weeks before that, I talked to superintendent. There's 800 employees in the union and the supervisors. There's no more union up there. It just doesn't work, right? They want nothing to do with it. So they were like shutting down homes and moving people around, and then staff didn't want to get screwed over. So I said, you know what, I'm going to talk to superintendent because I want what's best for the staff members. I want what's best for the people that reside here, especially. And they were going to shut down like a medically fragile house. And the superintendent knew that I knew everybody and knew how it worked. So he heard me out for 45 minutes. We had a talk. He ended up opening everything up, discussing who's going where, the plans for the whole facility for the next year, right? Like and he was like, in the end, he was like, you can be the voice of all 800 employees. He's like, anytime you guys and the individuals that live here, anytime anyone's got a problem, you can be the guy that comes to me, right? Well, 2 weeks later, I was fired by this supervisor that's below him but above me. Doesn't like just the power struggle, right? I'm advocating for human beings. Well, I'm telling him, I'm saying, hey, I'm working in a medically fragile house right now. Like, I could do it all, from dealing with behaviors or dealing with briefs. Like, I took great care of people, and everybody knew that. Like, when I went back, there's several older ladies that didn't approve of the treatment there, and they came up hugging me, and they're like, the protector's back, the protector's back. Well, anyway, so I told them, I said, these people are medically fragile. They need good care. Some of these homes they're going to, it's not going to be there, for lack of better terms. And he was like, yeah, I know. Like, because he knew what was going on. He was looking for a new job at the time and moved on to different jobs. But he was like honest with me. He's like, I know. Well, 2 years later, I went back. I discussed 10 names with him, right? In the 2 years, I said they're not going to get the care they need, lack of better terms, saying they're going to be abused. They're going to have meals missed. They need proper nutrition, medical care, and they're not going to get it in these homes. So 2 years later, I went back, and five of the 10 people were dead. I said, these 10 people need care here. They're going to be better in this home. They're not going to get to, well, they went through with their plans and put them in these abusive homes. 5 of the 10, that's 50% of these human beings' lives gone. And during my 2 years separated there, while a couple of these gentlemen were in hospice and passing away, after poor care, I went and spent days with them, took them all kinds of toys and gifts and stuff like that. Like, I loved them. I truly loved them. Like, one of them, I love like family. Like, you're not supposed to, but many of them I did. I took care of them, right? And so I went back, 5 of the 10. That's also in the Omaha World Herald. If you look up Glenwood Resource Center, they did an article on individuals dying at a high rate, right? Well, they can't figure it out. Why are they all of a sudden dying just at a crazy rate? Because they're not getting proper care in a medical facility. You got a bunch of people on drugs and alcohol, for lack of better terms. It's not the highest, they put a medical facility out in the middle of a cornfield. What do you think is going to happen? Like, when I was going through that orientation, I remember there was this one girl there. They're hiring her on at 19 years old, and the trainer, who is also a farmer, goes, "What's your work experience?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm a farmer. You know, I have boots and stuff." And she started laughing and looked at the other trainer. She goes, "You'll be perfect." You know why? Because they push them through like cattle, and they call it, I hate the R word, the retard. But they call it tard farming. They push them through like cattle, treat them like cattle. Like, when I first started working there years ago, before I'd worked there for that 5 or 6 year stint to start, the first home I went into was medically fragile. And I kid you not, all the workers were sitting there reading newspapers. And everyone in the wheelchairs were sitting around with puddles underneath them of urine. Just sitting there. Puddles of urine just... And by the time I left that home, after working in it for 8 months, nobody had urine underneath them. I would have other people watch the people that I was in charge of taking care of, so I could take their people. And eventually, leading by example, they would start taking them to the restroom. But what they would do is they'd leave them in urine for 6, 7, 8 hours, and then change their briefs and their clothes right before the next shift comes in. So what you do is you make sure they're dry for the next shift. Well, if you're one, and then it leads to the breakdown of the exterior skin barrier creams have to start being used, stuff like that. So nurses love me because I was always good on my creams, powders, keeping people dry. Because really, when they sit in a wheelchair, you can't have them. Like, so if they're 2 hours into a shift and they wet themselves and they got to sit there 6 more hours, their skin's going to break down. You're going to have to, give them a medical cream and stuff like that. So that was the difference I made in that first 8 months to a year in that one house. Like, I remember the first time I went in there, and the supervisor just like, "Oh, don't worry about that," But everyone, and I'm sitting there, and employees are sitting there reading newspapers, sitting at a table in a chair, and every one of these chairs, people had urine on them and like puddled underneath. Like, so I started taking care of them just out of empathy and kindness in my heart, right? And led by example. So they kind of changed that around. Well, then that's when I built a reputation for taking great care of these people, and people didn't expect that out of me. And then I worked in a abusive home. I had seen enough, and I put some people on the spot, like employees, and I said, "You're not going to treat these people like this. You're not going to do anything to them you won't do to me right now. And if you want to do it to them, come through me first." Like, period. I've seen enough. I don't like abuse, period. And so I was making a big difference up there, and people absolutely hate it. It still continues to this day. Like I said, the FBI and Department of Justice, they won't address it, and I've sent, if you watch on Truth Justice, Glenwood Resource Center, Rudy Camarillo on YouTube, that statement that I'm reading on there is submitted to DOJ, FBI, Kim Reynolds, governor of Iowa, Kelly Garcia, Department of Human Services, Iowa, like years ago, and they won't look into it. But just last year, the FBI and DOJ found him guilty of human experimenting. Now, if I still worked there and I was writing, advocating for human rights and constitutional and civil rights for these people, they wouldn't have been found guilty of human experimenting, because they wouldn't have been experimenting on the humans that I was in charge of advocating for. And that's why they push people out like myself. and then they get caught up. So they're always worried. So they went on this huge slander, defamation, saying, okay, we caused a bunch of trauma to him, his life, everything, just destroyed my life, man. Well, then they went back and like, oh, he was a wild child in 2001, 2000. I'm a 38-year-old man. I'm not 17 anymore, I've had a lot of life experiences. So they went on this huge slander, defamation, political ploys, and propaganda, pretty much, because they were fearing that this place would be shut down. They wouldn't have to fear of this place being shut down every day and every year if they simply respected human rights, civil rights, and treated people with empathy instead of abusing them. I never got it up there, because they refer to these people as paychecks. Like, oh, he's our paycheck. Well, if that's your paycheck, why don't you take care of it? How come they're dying at such a high rate? How come these 10 people that I said, these homes are not going to be healthy for them, 5 of the 10 died? These are all, like, everything I've said on this video is documented one way or the other. New York Times, DOJ, FBI, Omaha World Herald. Just look it up, do some research. So I stayed silent about it while they defamed me for years. So for me, it was torment, because I'm sitting here getting torn down by a community and people that I know are abusing other people. And in the end, it hurt my leadership and my empathy for these people that I loved and cared for. It cost my children the same care. Well, then these police departments, if you guys are true investigative reporters, journalists, you guys will look into my case, my situation, and I mean, all you got to do is go to Rudy Camarillo, RUDYCAMARILLO, and look at the last 5 to 6 years on my Facebook, because I will not be silenced about this. I've systematically been oppressed by lawyers, government entities and stuff, all which know the truth, and they've done everything they can to discredit me. Well, I'm tired of being discredited, and I'm tired of not being able to advocate and exercise my power of free will along with my first constitutional right, which in return would have my 6th constitutional right respected, which is what they did not want, because they knew about how much damage it caused to myself and my family. And they knew that about the matters that would be addressed if I were to be heard. So these are just the tip of the iceberg, and I'm reaching out right now. So they did the slander, defamation. They drove me the Glenwood, Iowa Police Department. I went to Omaha area. Omaha Police Department got in on it with them. It was like, we got your back, right? We'll keep them silenced. They harassed me day in and day out with sirens, starting in March of 2017 and ending December 20th of 2020 when I finally left. I actually left there last year, the year before, in an attempt for like 4 to 5 months, went to Las Vegas. Las Vegas police department did the same siren running harassment, intruding through my phones and stuff like that. And then I went back to Omaha needing to see my kids, but I couldn't see my kids because they kept playing games. The mother keeps getting arrested. I mean, a couple years ago, she was arrested with my sister, of all people, for injecting substances, you guys can imagine. Well, she's been arrested 4 to 5 times since. So what they did was they cover up her records, and they put all kinds of false stuff on my records. They turned 2 evictions. If you looked at my record, 2 evictions with private companies turned into State of Iowa versus Rudy for 7 lines on my record. There's all kinds of false stuff, and they were threatening my life. So what they were doing was, this is a pretty deep case, you guys. Like, what they were trying to do was defame me, justify their actions, and then permanently silence me. And I will not be permanently silenced. I don't care if I give my life tomorrow, next week, or 30 years from now. I'm going to continue speaking out against the abuse rendered by these people for the people that are downtrodden, weaker, have no voice or a lesser voice, or even haven't found their voice, because everybody needs to have a voice. And I've endured so much that it's absolutely ridiculous and necessary that individuals that are there to advocate, respect their oaths, the Constitution, and pursue truth, get behind me, and we take sides. Not take sides. Sides are for dodgeball and dinner. There's truth. I would like to be an investigative reporter or journalist one day, or a reporter. I would absolutely love it. It's in my blood. And that's what I plan on doing by myself, but I need individuals with the ability and the resources to step it up so we can get this story taken care of and addressed. So I went down to Florida. The Florida police started harassing me, and I'm talking doing nothing illegal. I mean, so they started saying like my ex was on drugs, right? Well, then I have anxiety and stuff, so they started saying I was on drugs. So for 5 years, I've been getting clean hair follicle tests at $120 a pop. Like, They're just trying to do everything they can to discredit me. They planted, like, it's been a pretty wild story. Read Used, Abused, and Amused by Rudy J. Camarillo on Amazon. Um, and everything I can back up. So I went to Florida. They started doing their little nonsense. I said, that's enough after a month or two. Now I'm up in Washington, D.C. I've been contacting the Department of Justice, and I'm looking for an advocate. I'm sending this out to many people, particularly in New York. I've contacted New York Times, I believe, a year or two ago. This is long ongoing. 2, 3 years ago, I contacted Dateline. 2, 3 years ago, I contacted New York Times, and it continues every day, right? I just want my civil rights, um, constitutional rights. I want to feel American again. I want to get my children to safety and security, and I want to prohibit and hinder the abuse of individuals. I will never stop the abuse because abusers can't be stopped. But I can prevent and hinder it with the story and the truth. Um, so I'm in Washington D.C. right now. This week I'm gonna be working really hard at reaching out. It took me a lot to come forward with it, and I have endured relentless life threats, stuff like that. Like, I am the American advocate, and I truly believe, like, I don't know if you guys are religious or anything. I believe God just opened my eyes and put me in a position to see all this so I can address it and prohibit the pain of others in the future and stand up for the people themselves. Not only the people without a voice, the people with disabilities, but the people that are, of a lower class, a lower social class. Because I'll tell you right now, the systematic oppression has been really hard. And one of the things, here's another aspect of it. This is a hell of a story if any of you guys want to get in on it. I mean, it's absolutely all true. So the small town's doing me dirty, right? And here's how I've contacted 200 and something lawyers within the Midwest. Well, one of the strong lawyers there was a former district attorney in this small town, right? Well, she did some falsifications on paperwork, put a false no contact order between me and my wife. And I was like, how did she do this falseness? She had me sign a blank document and then filled it in. Don't ever do that. Um, well, then I found out about it and I said, because I knew she was on drugs, right? So it was a small town dirty scandal. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie with The Rock, Walking Tall. That's kind of what it was. I hadn't been there for 10, 15 years, come back, had no idea about the fraternizing, the ties, all that stuff. So I said, so I got on social media one day when I found out what she had done, and I just simply put, how's the town district attorney dating a 2-decade-long methamphetamine dealer? And then a week later, the small town newspaper, district attorney resigns. I was like, oh my lord. So that's how it started. And then she got in all the lawyers' ears and they started playing these political games, systematic oppression. And I've been through it all, man. For 6 years, I've been just being myself and tearing through their discrediting and stuff like that. But I must be heard. It is absolutely on my soul, my heart. I cannot go to bed warm at night knowing that this is going to be done. This is being done to individuals. It's been done to people in the past, and it's going to be done to people in the future when I could do something about it. So I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm speaking out. I'm here to be an advocate, potentially a reporter, and bring other things such as this to light. But this is one of the largest stories in the country. So if anybody out there has the resources, the assets, the ability to broadcast, publish, or investigate, I am urging you right now to do so. I am, it is Sunday. I'm going to spend Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday reaching out to people in Washington, D.C., such as Department of Justice. Just left a message with them yesterday. I'm trying to get this cracked open because I've been shut down at every level. I mean, last year I contacted the the President of the United States twice, contacted the President again 2 weeks ago. I've contacted the President's um, Federal Bureau of Investigations. I mean, I don't have anything to hide here. Like, I'm going all out. I've been doing this for years. Like, it's a complete failure of the intelligence community. And for that reason, a lot of it's being silenced and stuff like that. And I'm really questioning, like, the true advocacy and transparency of our country, that will do anything and everything they can to deny accountability and actually have transparency and integrity within their own leadership. So, as I was saying, so by Friday, I want to have someone open, shut, sitting in front of someone that knows what's going on. But I'm Washington, D.C., very close to New York. I'm willing to come to New York. I'm in a position to do so, and I want to advocate. So I'm reaching out to people in New York right now. And looking to share my story, do some investigation, do some curing and healing of this world's disease of abuse, and be heard. And initially, it started with me like being like, "Hey, just restore my family, put us back together," because it was totally broken up, horrible timing, snowballed out of control. It's really just something, a small town conspiracy that reached outside, got a little bit conspiring. Like, we don't like the word, but it's true. Many of you guys watching this may already know about it as much as the country does. So something needs to be done. It kept blowing up and blowing up. It's a perfect example of humanistic emotions and how people operate and how we need that to cease. And it's a perfect example, if broken open, cracked open, and like pursued. With my case, I mean, we could have law schools, schoolrooms like teaching, hey, this is what you don't do. This is what they're going to do next. These are the repercussions. These are the detrimental effects of it. This is what's going to happen. This is how systematic oppression works. This is how the abuse works. Like, there's a lot of learning to be had. Like I've said, after 6.3 years of pain, the only way I can get through it is with the gain of others. So my pain is their gain, and I must be heard. I'm tired of not being heard and systematically oppressed while searching through the ranks of our judicial system and having my beliefs crushed. Like earlier, I told you, I don't know if you guys are believers or not. It's me personally. I believe in God. But I mean, the police have even used churches and stuff. So, I mean, there's pastors we could look into. Like, I've had pastors, like, threaten my life if I spoke, God's laws, not man's laws. Like, they've used 4 or 5 churches. So I had to quit church years ago, like, and just believe and truly believing in something higher in myself, because I went to church for the last true thing of leadership, thinking, okay, they look above man, God knows the truth, right? Stupid. Put it in God's hands, right? Well, they found that out and they started using these churches. So everyone would start with, respect God's laws, man's laws don't apply. Well, yeah, when you're going to bat for a bunch of men that are there to enforce the laws and violating the laws, of course it doesn't apply. Just to you, right? We got to do something. I want my story to benefit the generations of the future, the youth, and I want it to open the eyes of individuals. And I mean, if there obviously needs to be reprimands. So I mean, as far as leadership, like being a former Marine, platoon sergeant, stuff like that, like I know accountability and leading by example. And if you got the people at the top authorizing corruption and conspiring in order to silence stories and abuse, those people coming up below them are gonna follow that example. So there's no accountability or reprimand for the police chiefs, like Police Chief Schmader of Omaha Police Department, the head one, right? Authorizing this for 3 years in Omaha. So say you got some dirty little officer who's been doing this for 3 years for him. Well, all of a sudden he's doing illegal surveillance and harassment and phone tapping on his girlfriend, right? How is this chief going to reprimand him and say, whoa, you're being a weirdo, like that's illegal, you're going to be fired, I'm writing this up? He'll say, no, chief, like that's exactly what you had me do to Mr. Camarillo and his family for 3 years. You know what I'm saying? They've had illegal surveillance. I mean, it's several different cases all tied into one. It's a big corruption and conspiring case, longevity and severity of, no other. And there has to be reprimands, or else this example will continue going on for the people in future generations. We have to do something, like I said, with the illegal surveillance stuff. They've used roommates and had it in homes and stuff like that. But the way they manipulate it is by abusing authority over them, obviously, which, unless you're strong-willed or a pursuer of truth, like, you're going to allow that yourself to be manipulated, right? Well, they're doing this illegal surveillance, like running sirens. So every time I wake up in the morning, they run sirens to let me know that they're watching me. Every time I lay down and turn everything off at night, they'd run sirens to let me know, right? Well, my daughters, 11 and 13-year-old, are undressing in that same place that they're surveilling. We have police officers being broken down on every couple weeks for child pornography rings, being perverts, stuff like that. I mean, no entity, because of their title, is not susceptible to corruption or humanistic emotions, So I take that very personal. Like, I took it personal that they're violating my civil rights and doing all the surveillance and stuff with all these people. I mean, all these examples come with a list of names. And the FBI and DOJ knows that. and I've given it to them. But they know if they exercise their authority, they're going to get the truth, which they do not want. They want it to dissipate, and they want the damages of my life, my family, and that to just go by the wayside as if we are numbers. We are numbers, but we are ones that matter, as is every American citizen in this country. But anyway, so I didn't take it very personal. Like I took it personal with them doing the surveillance stuff, but then like as I read these articles and stuff, and I'm thinking about these people that wash my daughter's undress and stuff like that. Like if you go on my Facebook, you can see go through it because I'm not being silent about it. I mean, Facebook's the only thing that's honoring my First Amendment right now, and I'm hoping an advocate or a reporter or a journalist out there will do the same. But so I've been putting stuff on. I find GPSs in my vehicle all the time. I had to take my radio out because I found a camera in my radio. I broke it. I took pictures and put it on there. You know, I have a little GPS sweeper. I have to sweep everywhere I go, and that's how I found it. I found what 2, 3 GPSs. I had one on my last vehicle too, and then I found a camera in my truck. Right. So it's real stuff. You just go to my Facebook, Rudy Camarillo, and you'll see it. But like, think about it. So that camera's in my car, right? I can't even listen to music now, right? I can't have electronics in my car because I found a camera in it. Well, I take my kids to the beach and stuff, to the lake on the weekends. My kids are changing in that vehicle in front of that camera. I mean, this is a serious matter, and I'm tired of being silent. I'm in a position, I feel like I've been graced and put here, and I'm, throughout my whole life, been a strong advocate, leader, and lack of better terms, warrior. Like for Constitution, the oath, and like a better tomorrow, leading by example. So I need a drink of water, so we're going to end this video. But I am ready to advocate, and I need a fellow advocate, journalist, reporter, news, just anybody with the resources or assets to do something here to make a difference in this world and stop this abuse, whether it be abuse upon myself by authority, abuse on my children, and neglect, in a neglectful, addicted like environment, or the abuse of the disabled. Like, so sometimes I get this really strong, like, that was what was the worst part, is like that first year was so damaging because I go to bed thinking about it cost me my children, and it cost me the individuals I worked with there, and all of which I protected, right, from abuse and neglect. So like I was left for dead. My mom had just taken her life, and I'm worried about my children, who they're around, what they're going through, the worries, the tears. And then I'm doing the same for the disabled and stuff like that. Like we all helped each other heal and grow, and like that first year was the worst. Read Used, Abused, and Amused. I mean, I don't think I went too far into detail on it, like with the abuse in the state facility there, because I was more worried about the police corruption and stuff, the cover-ups. But I was giving them time to figure it out. Well, I'm not anymore. I'm here to take a stand. My name is Rudy Camarillo. Join me. Let's advocate. Let's pursue truth, justice, transparency, and honor First Amendments, and help not cease but hinder the abuse of individuals with lesser abilities, the innocent, and those that cannot stand for themselves or speak for themselves. God bless you guys. Looking forward to networking. Contact me. My number is 941-248-7592. 941-248-7592. It's not the most secure line, but I will get another flip phone or something, a burner, to interact with. You can call me on it with initial contacts. We all know how electronic intrusion works. Rudy, R-U-D-Y-J, Camarillo, RUDYJCAMARILLO at yahoo.com is my email. Feel free to contact me. Like I said, I'm sending this, it'll be around Washington, D.C. and New York. And right now I'm in a pivotal point, and I'm going to go wherever the advocates are. And I'm looking to make big things happen next week or two. And I hope your mind, your heart, your duties as an American, and your pursuance of truth shine through, and maybe we can get to a networking or advocating for each other, with each other, and for others. God bless you guys. Have a good day. Silence enables sins. Everybody I'm contacting, or every advocate watching this, you are doing the right thing. You are. It takes people like you to make this place a better country, a better world. Keep up the good fight. I look forward to hearing from you.